Peace be to you. In with the problem of evil. Let us begin with the question.
Kia ora, and now my haramai to another episode of Curiously Catholic, the Evangelion podcast. If you want to get involved with what we're doing, don't forget, check out our website, evangelion.co.nz. Go on our Instagram page, YouTube, Spotify, and all those things. Like, share, and subscribe. I'm really excited because I'm going to be talking to a scientist today. We'll get more details of what kind of science she does. Her name's Stacy Trasancos. I hope I'm saying that correctly. And we're going to have a great conversation. We're going to talk about quantum science and the Catholic Church. Is there a quantum realm? Is there a multiverse? We'll find out very quickly when we ask Stacy right now. Kia ora, Stacy. How's it going?
Hello. Howdy from Texas. How are you?
Brilliant. Wow, Texas. That seems to be the place to be in America.
I think so. I was born and raised here, so.
Really? Oh, wow, that's cool. Man, America is just, it's another world to me, man. I'm originally from England, and now I live in New Zealand, and whereas I have traveled across the world, and I do have family in America, it just seems that, like, it's such a vast place and so many people. And you've lived there your whole life.
Yes. Yeah, I've traveled. I've been to Australia, so I get the feeling about how far away it is, because it is on the other side of the world and upside down, as we say. So it is.
Well,
When
then
you
also,
fly a plane over the Pacific Ocean all the way from California to Australia, it's a bit daunting to be on a plane for that long above the ocean. Like,
yeah,
if anything goes wrong, you're dead. So,
I hope you can swim at really high speeds.
yeah, yeah,
Also, but then you're also from Texas, and that seems to be its own country in itself. It's like it's got a real strong culture and identity there. But like
we do. We think of ourselves as our own nation. So, you know.
Wow, well, a nation within a nation. I love it. So, you are a blogger, a scientist, a theologian, and a Catholic. Is that correct?
And I'm also working on a PhD in philosophy right now, just to put it all together.
Well, you might as well go a few hours in a day.
Yeah.
And so, how did you? So, can you give us a bit of a background? How did you start out? Did you start out as a Catholic theologian and philosopher and become a scientist, or became a scientist and became a theologian and philosopher?
Well, I started out as a chemist. I loved science all my life as a child. I became a chemist. I got a PhD at Penn State University and worked for DuPont, the largest chemical company in the world. And then in my 30s, I realized that science doesn't have all the answers to the questions that I had. So I really was one of those people who thought science did have all the answers to everything. And I lived that way. But in my 30s, I realized I was very lonely and not satisfied with the answers I was getting. And long story short, I prayed, I met a man, we got married, he led me into the Catholic Church. And now we have 7 children and 7 grandchildren and 23 almost years of marriage. So it worked out really well. And in that time when I left my career to stay home with my kids, that was a choice I made. I wanted to know more about our faith. So I got a master's degree in dogmatic theology. And then recently I got another master's degree in systematic philosophy, because I love how those 3 things fit together: chemistry, theology, and philosophy. And I'm working on a PhD in philosophy now, just because I want to.
Well, I mean, sounds great. I have to say, when it comes to theology and philosophy, I've dabbled a bit, but it's definitely outside of my brain capacity, and I don't think I'd ever be able to do PhD level. I did a degree in religious studies and theology, and it's when I was atheist myself, and I thought, ooh, Buddhism sounds interesting.
Wow.
That all nutshell, and but like it sounds like you met quite an impressive bloke if he managed to bring you all the way into the Catholic Church and live this completely different life. You say that you lived as though science had all the answers. What does that look like? How do you live as if science has all the answers?
Well, as a chemist, I thought of everything as made of atoms, right? Because that's my world.
Hmm.
And I literally looked at other people as highly complex composite systems of atoms and molecules. And it was my own children that really got to me. Like, I didn't understand my love for them. I didn't understand what love really was. And I sensed that they were more than just a bunch of atoms. Uh, and I went looking for answers. I think we all do that. We want to know. I mean, my love of science was a search for God in a way, because I was searching for the truth about the world. And I just kept going beyond science. I was willing to look beyond science to the bigger questions. And I'm just continuing to go. That's what we do our whole life, is continue to learn things and ask questions and try to figure things out, accepting that we never will have it all figured out. But it's kind of a fun way to live.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, I mean, there is an element of like it is helpful to have that such a strong opinion of a worldview. And like you, because again, with science, again, it's not wrong. It's just not the whole picture. Because you're right, we are made up of a complex composite of atoms, and this is true. I've just been talking to Father Dalton. He's an expert in the Shroud of Turin, and they've been talking about the
I know
science.
him.
Yeah.
Yes,
Well, he's coming
I
over
know
to New
him.
Zealand in a couple of weeks, and he's going to give some talks to us. But we were coming to that point of like how the science, it tells us a lot and it's really good, but it doesn't tell us everything, and like it gets to a
Right.
point where we need to make a leap of I'm either going to believe this or not. And so when you came, how did you come to faith after having that perspective in science?
Um, there were. It was being open. I was open to what the church calls granting intellectual assent to the truths of faith, and I thought, I did that with chemistry before I understood chemistry. I opened the textbook, I read what was there, I listened to my professors, I accepted what they were teaching me on faith in them to be telling me the truth. And then I went into the lab and I put my hands on test tubes and beakers and solutions, and I saw with my own senses that it was right. And I approached it that way with faith. I said, okay, I grant intellectual assent to these dogmas of the Catholic Church. And I had to change everything about my worldview, because I was feminist, woman with a career, didn't need men, all that stuff, contraception. I had to rethink myself, my relationships, my motherhood. I had to rethink all of that. But I said, I'm going, and what the church is really good at is giving just the dogmas that need to be there. Like, the church is very careful about not saying more than we know, which impressed me. So I learned what the church teaches about the human person, that we're body, true, but we're also rational soul, which blew my mind because I'd never heard of that, but it sounded right to me, that we're more than just our particles, that we have this immaterial spiritual part of our being that's real and actually separates from the body at death and lives on. And so that's where we can make choices about virtue and doing what's right and doing what's wrong. And then the church has all this teaching on moral code and how we're supposed to make moral decisions. So I fell in love with all of that formulaic way of living. And I said, I'm going to grant intellectual assent. I'm going to not speak out of both sides of my mouth. I'm going to believe it, and I'm going to live by it. And I'm not going to pick and choose. I'm all in, I'm completely going to be a Catholic. I even went to daily mass every day for the 2 years that it took me to be accepted into the church, to be received, to have First Communion. I went to daily mass every day with two little kids and pregnant with a third one at the time. And I would do this, and I would go all the way up to the Eucharist, and the people in the church were like, "Come on, let her receive. She's here all the time." And I said, "No, I'm going to do this the right way, but I do want to get as close to like that's Christ, that's the Lord of the universe, and I want to get as close as I can, but I'm also going to follow the rules, and I'm going to respect this until it's time to receive it. But I just wanted to be there." And that was my way of saying, I'm doing this all the way. And so, just like with chemistry, once I decided to go into the lab and live the life of faith, then it started to make sense to me. Then it made sense to me why you don't use contraception, why Mass is an obligation, why Mass isn't all about me, and all the other things. It started to make a lot of sense. And I'm just really grateful for the treasures in the Catholic Church, because it really has helped me make sense of my own life.
That's amazing. That's like so amazing. I think this is like really, you're the perfect person to talk about this, because I feel like sometimes I feel like I have all these, you know, understandings of like the obligation of Mass, contraception, everything you've talked about. It's like, yeah, I get that, but you've come from a place of what people would perceive as the exact opposite. It's like I have certainty in knowledge through empirical observations and scientific method, and I've realized that though there is accuracy and there is truth in that, it's not the truth. Something that I've been talking about a few episodes ago is talking about this concept of truth is, typically truth is, does this thing that I think apply to reality? And this is like what you were saying that you found out. It's like, oh, brilliant. Yeah, so I think this. I went into the lab, I tested it, and it works, so it must be true. But then it's almost it's almost a trick, because like
Yeah.
it's maybe true, but it's not the truth,
Yeah.
Yeah, and you've done a complete. I want to say 180, but it's not even 180. It's just an ascent. You've gone. You've transcended without throwing out. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's like you've gone
Yeah.
deeper, and it's amazing to hear that this like transformation. So
You know what
like,
it was like? It was like, just to interrupt. I'm sorry I interrupted
no,
you.
please do.
It's like that first time you take a plane ride somewhere, and you see your house from the plane, or you can
Right.
find. It's like I lived looking around at the ground and digging around, but when I went up in the plane, that was like faith. Now I saw the same things, I just saw them in a bigger context.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good, because people say that about going to the space station and stuff. They
Yeah.
they look at Earth and they're like, why are we fighting over things? It's all the same. There's no borders or anything. Um, yeah, it's crazy. So you kind of mentioned like kind of the spiritual understanding from a scientific perspective, and I wanted to get into like we're going to talk about quantum physics and stuff. And you're a chemist, and I have no idea what the real difference between chemistry and physics is. But like, just to finish off this segment on like faith and science, I heard this quote from a filmmaker, Ken Burns, and it says, "We think that the opposite of faith is doubt. Doubt is central to faith. The opposite of faith is certainty, which destroys the mystery of the unknown." I just wanted to get your take on that on that quote, because it talks about a lot of things that I think are found in faith and in science, namely mystery, certainty, and doubt. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's the doubt. I agree with that doubt is kind of the same thing, because you're wondering. Wonder, I think, is the word I would use. Philosophy starts with wonder, and you're wondering about things, and you're searching for questions. But yeah, certainty has become, and that's a good tie-in to quantum physics, quantum chemistry, because certainty is not something we really have. The only thing you can be certain of, the most thing you can be certain of, is your own faith, your belief. Belief is certain. If you say, I believe in the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist, you're not making a halfway statement. You're saying, I believe. You can't say, I believe now and I might not believe tomorrow, because then you don't believe at all. It's not something that changes. It's a certain thing. Um, and and so everything else is uncertain. How we think other people are, what we know in science, what we think we're going to do tomorrow. It's all a matter of uncertainty. And so mystery is the kind of thing that you spend your whole life diving into. And I'm an educator too, and I've really worked on this in education, to stop teaching people to look for the one right answer, but teach them to be comfortable in the mystery. Teach them to be comfortable searching for answers, even though you're not going to find the one right answer. Even though you're just going to find more questions, get comfortable with that kind of approach to knowledge. Because a lot of the way education goes today is we teach kids to solve the problem and get the one right answer, and then you make a 100. But it's actually not helping them think more critically.
Yeah, and there's something satisfying about getting the right answer. But
Yeah.
like, again, there is so much depth to everything. Well, pretty much everything. There's so much depth to it that, like, sometimes I feel it's like almost you can't have a right answer if you're going to make the next step. You have to have a right enough answer. Like, one of the things that I used to hate when I was at university is multiple choice questions, because they say, what's the most correct answer? And there was 3 that were correct, but you had to say which one was the most correct. And like, that doesn't fit with anything I've ever been taught before. There is right and there is wrong, and you want me to say what's the most right. So technically, even if I make the wrong answer, I'm still right. I'm just not the right in the way you want me to be right.
Still
And
wrong. Yeah, that's very.
But like, yeah, so which comes up against everything to do with truth. What is truth? The most right. So we are diving into the mystery of the world. And I think science has done a very good job of explaining, how things happen. And we're now going into this with, I feel like quantum physics has been around for probably a very, very long time, but it seems to be coming more and more into the forefront with quantum computing. Like, apparently they've created the first ever quantum computer, which it's the size of like a penny, and it's got more computing power than all the computers in the world or something like that. And then, so we're now working at this atomic level, and it makes wonder seem possible again in science. And I feel like as Catholics, we've had the monopoly on wonder for the longest time. And I'm wondering, is it being taken away from us? Is science now entering into the spiritual realm, and we're finding these new realities, and actually turns out it was all scientific in the first place, and we've just finally caught up with the God of the gaps?
Right. So that's a big question. I don't look at it that way at all. To me, the quantum realm, if you're talking in terms of history, it's actually very new on the scene. I collect physics textbooks and chemistry textbooks that are old, because I like it, specifically with quantum chemistry, quantum mechanics. I like to see how the textbooks evolved over the last 50 years. 100 years ago, we wouldn't have been having this conversation.
Right.
100 years ago, it was, things were just newly starting to be understood. 200 years ago, definitely not having this conversation. So what mankind has discovered about the atomic realm in the last 200 years is a testament to our rational nature. I mean, it's absolutely phenomenal what scientists have come up with. I recommend the book called the Making of the. It's right over there on my bookshelf. It's called The Making of the Atomic Bomb, and it's a historical account of everything. So they had to learn how to split the atom to make the bomb, and the scientists that were involved in that were very confused and hurt and upset when they realized what that knowledge was going to be used for.
Mm.
But the book goes through, it won a Pulitzer Prize. It goes through the experiments they did to figure out what the atom is made of.
Mm.
And it's mind blowing. So anyway, back to the point, science has become a way for us to dig deeper into nature. And the deeper we dig, smaller particles, faster speeds, the less certain it is, because we are limited. So we have dug so deep into the nature of matter that we've reached a point where we just can't go beyond it. It seems, maybe we will, but it seems like we can't go beyond it. And that's where the uncertainty is. But it's not anything spiritual. It's not, there is one truth. And so there is spiritual and there is physical and there is body, there is soul. It all fits together, but that still is just nature. And the view I take of it is I don't go into this modern science looking for answers to my faith. I I start with faith and I say this is all the handiwork of God, and science is the study of the handiwork of God. And isn't that something that we have discovered, that A, nature is this intelligible, and B, we're this intelligent? Isn't it amazing that we have discovered these things? So I kind of I do a lot of work in the right way to approach faith and science. I keep them separate in that way. They're still part of one truth, but you don't want to go into the mystery here and say that proves something over here, because faith is faith is what we look at the whole world. We look at the whole world through our eyes of faith, and I actually get very upset when people go into whether it's Eucharistic miracles or whether it's quantum physics, and they try to shore up their faith with science, because you're never going to find the one right answer for faith except Jesus Christ. You're never going to find those answers. You really, I think today in this world, this scientific age, we need to be talking to people about what it means to have faith. What a radical thing it is to have faith. You have to be willing to say, forget all the rest of this stuff. Do I believe in the testimony of Jesus Christ or not? And then when you say yes, then you start learning all of this other stuff. But I kind of got off the track there with your question, but that's how I put the two together.
No, I think you've still remained within the realms of what we're talking about, because there's been this divorce between faith and reason, which has been for centuries the case, because reason makes sense to us, but faith goes beyond us, and it requires us to go beyond ourselves. And it seems that science catches up with us, and we see that, especially nowadays, there's lots of science-based things. Science is applied to absolutely everything. Going to the gym, what you eat, how you do your laundry, probably, there's, or like how you live your life. There's a scientific method of how do we create good habits? How do we optimize our life? And here's the science behind it. And so it's kind of become almost like a cure-all to everything. If you want to know something, let's do it. Let's use the scientific method. But something that I always struggle with, especially when reading the Bible, is, so the Bible is telling us the truth, but it's like when the analogy you gave, you were digging around in the dirt doing your chemistry, and then you viewed your house from an airplane, and so then it's like everything's different. So the example I always give is the Israelites were in the desert for 40 years, right? And there's this kind of tradition of using numbers to tell you the truth, but it's not accurate. It's not like what truly happened, but it's truly what happened, if you know what I mean. So they weren't in the desert for 40 years, but what they're being told there, what you're being told there, is they were there for longer than they should have been, and it was an eternity. 40 years is a symbolic number for a particular meaning, which tells you a deeper truth of what actually happened. It's like, you don't need to know the details, but this is what happened. And so like it's like almost like that wasn't enough for people, especially like nowadays. It's like, well, that we weren't in the desert for 40 years. That's a lie. So if this is meant to be the truth, the way, in the life, Jesus Christ, and he's telling us these half truths about being vague about the actual facts. And like another example is like when they talk about like the feeding of the 5,000 and like 7 baskets with 12 loaves and stuff like that. It's like there wasn't that many baskets, there wasn't that many loaves and fish left over, but what was left over was a symbol. That's a symbol for what was left over, and it's like, well, what's real, you know? And so we get so lost in this scientism that we forget that there is what you discovered. There's a deeper reality. And so, using your analogy again, would you say that, like, so going deep, so science, you're on the ground, faith, you are in the air, and maybe like, so with quantum science, what we're doing is we're going out into space and we're looking out from a further view. It's like, oh, scientifically, we can see there's more, but we are still in a rocket ship. We haven't gone above it. We're just still within it.
Yeah, I mean, the phrase I coined after writing Particles of Faith. So that's the book that I published in 2016, coming up on 10 years, is that science is the study of the handiwork of God. And I tell all my students that you don't even have to know very much about science to appreciate what we're saying there. That science is the study of the handiwork of God, and it's always going to be that. And so if science is any kind of proof of God's existence, it's that inductive kind of proof where the more we know, the more we're awed and, you know, awe and wonder about what God has created. And I keep the quantum realm looking at it that way. It has told us a lot of things, but it's opened up a lot more questions that we will, you know, that we'll probably find some answers in our lifetime, but certainly not all of them. And you know, it sounds really simple to say science is the study of the handiwork of God, but I kind of just leave it there. And I found 2 words that I have in Particles of Faith that I like, descriptive and prescriptive, that the laws that we discover are prescribed by God and described by us. So we're always trying to touch what's out there and describe it. But God prescribed it. He already knows all the laws he already knows, I like to say, where all the electrons are on the end of your nose right now. Because I mean, that's the thing with the quantum world is the electron. We know electrons are in the atoms, but we don't even have a prayer of doing it. We can never point to an electron at any specific instant in time. That's Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, and say, oh, there's the electron, because they're moving too fast and they're too small. But everything about quantum computing, everything that we're relying on right now to be able to talk from opposite sides of the world depends on our understanding of these electrons. That's what quantum physics, quantum chemistry, anything quantum, that's what it is. It's the electron. Where are the electrons in the atoms? And we have a really good idea about where they exist in these orbitals. Even though we can't find them at any one point in time, we have a good idea about their energy. Such a good idea that we're talking about quantum computing. Quantum computing means that we can control where the electrons go at that scale. And it's amazing. You know, I'll tell you in a minute just how small these things are. It will blow your mind.
Yeah. Well, yeah, getting onto the size of things. So it sounds like, you know, we used to deal with, scientifically speaking, we used to deal with humans. We had things like bloodletting, so we knew that there was something smaller inside you, and there was like 4 elements. There's blood, bile, and I don't know, can't remember. It's medieval history. And then we were like, actually, no, we cut someone open, and there's actually organs. Okay, so we're going a bit smaller. And then we get to like cellular biology. And so is is it just more of the same but a lot smaller? Like, a circle with a dot in the middle, the dot's the nucleus, the circle's the cell membrane. And then you've got the atom, which is a dot with in a circle, and you've got an electron, which is a dot in a circle. Is that kind of what it is?
Kind of what it is. Like cells are gigantic compared to atoms. So an atom is made of the protons and neutrons in the nucleus. So the protons are positively charged. As high school chemistry here, going way back there. Yeah. Not so far back for you, but further back for me. The protons are positively charged. The neutrons are neutral, and the electrons are negatively charged. And so in the nucleus, it's kind of like a little solar system. But in the nucleus are those protons. The size of a proton, I'll tell you how it'll take a little bit of imagination, but the size of a proton in that nucleus of an atom is, if you take a sugar cube. Do y'all have sugar cubes? Okay.
Yep.
We don't have them so much anymore, but they used to be out, like they were a teaspoon each. So a sugar cube is about 4 grams. If you got the mass of it, it's about 4 grams. If you cut it in half to about 2 grams, and then you take that half of a sugar cube and you cut it into 1 billion pieces. Okay. Like, try to imagine that you do that with your mind. Cut it into 1 billion pieces, throw all of them away except for 1 billionth of the half, and now cut it into 1 billion pieces. And throw everything away except for 1 piece, and now cut it into 1 million pieces.
Oh my goodness.
You're down at the size of a proton. So it's 1 millionth of a billionth of a billionth of a half a sugar cube, approximately. So you get down to that. The electron is 2,000 times smaller than that.
Okay.
So like the brain,
right.
The brain can't do it, but that's why we use scientific notation. But that's how small we're talking about. And we have these quantum numbers that tell us what orbital the electron is in, what suborbital it's in, which relates to the energy of the electron, and what spin it has. And those are the quantum numbers that we learned properties about these electrons, and those are the quantum numbers. That is quantum mechanics. There's a lot of math associated with it. Just to bring it back up to the macroscopic scale, when you're seeing colors, like everything you're seeing right now, those are rays of light, electromagnetic radiation, light rays that are coming from the movement of the electrons in the atoms to your eyes. So everything that you're seeing right now is a function of electrons jiggling around in the atoms somewhere. And that's how we interact with that nature. And then it goes into your brain, and that's a whole nother story about how your brain interprets it. But that's what we've learned about the quantum world. and we've not only learned about it, we've mastered it, so we can make these things now. And for me, I'm not like the people you say who are like, oh, we've figured things out now. More than ever, I'm like, holy cow. If the Israelites had faith in God because the sun rose every day, and they're like, yeah, God's pretty faithful. If they knew about quantum mechanics, they would be like, God is really faithful.
Yeah. Man, it's intelligent design on steroids. Well, I mean, it's just intelligent design. It's just we're coming to realize it. Oh my goodness. So is it kind of like with electrolytes? You've got positive and negative. Well, that's the ions and stuff, and then it's even because the other thing that came to mind.
It's all about the electron. Chemistry is all about the electrons.
The other thing that was coming to mind was I mentioned earlier, Father Dalton. He talks about the Shroud of Turin. It's on 0.2 microns above the surface of the shroud or something like that. I can't remember the details of it, but like it's like, God works on this level. And I guess it's just like, when a kid you've got 7 kids, I've got a 4th one on the way.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Have you, one of the funniest things with newborns is when they discover their hands and they realize, and you just see them looking at their hands like, oh oh my goodness. It's like, we're kind of like that, but with quantum mechanics. It's like, oh yeah, no, this has always existed. And like for a being like God and the angels, he's like, this is simple. And another thing that came to mind is I don't know who said it, but you're into philosophy. You'll probably know more about this than me. It's like, how many angels can dance on the head of a pin? And like, I was told the answer is all of them. But like, yeah, so we're dealing with things. I can see how people would be like, all right, we've cracked it, because all of a sudden we're dealing with things on a level that we never even knew existed. It's like not realizing that ants were organized, and then opening up an ant colony and being like, oh my gosh, these guys are super intelligent. It's like, no, they're ants. But so, oh my gosh. All those figures, my brain is just, you can't see it, but at the back of my head, it's just been exploded. It's like, how?
I live that way. And, just to go the other way, talking about the going the other way. So an atom is that small, the protons in it are that small with the electrons going around it. How many atoms are in your body? An average 70 kilogram male has about 7 billion atoms. That's like a 7 with 27 zeros after it.
Yeah.
So you have a whole bunch of these really, really tiny things making up your body. And that scripture that says God knows how many hairs you have on your head. It's not just that. God knows where every single electron is in every single atom that makes up every single keratin protein molecule on every single hair in your head, and all the rest of the atoms in your whole body. Like God knows all that, and God's holding us in existence right now. Like, for me, becoming a woman of faith, I was at first, I was like, God, that's a little too close. You need to back off. But it was a mind-blowing idea that God, that's what it means to say God. God didn't just create all of this. He knows everything about it in every single moment of time. And that is really mind-blowing to me. That's, when I say science is the study of the handiwork of God, I'm like, yeah, let's go discover stuff.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, look, there's a map been laid out. Let's go find out what's on that map and see where it leads us. So, trying to get myself back on track and not mind blown, but just by numbers. One thing I was thinking is like, I saw someone explain, and I've forgotten. Obviously, the explanation wasn't good enough, or it was too abstract for me. The difference between a million and a billion, because we've got billionaires that are quite famous at the moment, and it's like a billion isn't just like another zero. It's another few zeros, but like, as the quantity difference is just insane. And they split it into seconds, and as like a billion is like, in seconds is like 3 years or something like that. I can't remember exactly. But yeah, bring it back on track. Curiously Catholic, Stacy Trasancos. Hey, so we've got there's this comedian called Peter Holmes, and he does this bit on, I don't know if you've seen it. He starts saying like, you think you're in America, zoom out, you're on a planet, and that's in the universe. And, he's talking about how big everything is. But then he also talks about how small everything is. It's like, you're made out of molecules, the same molecules that, this bench is made out of. And some reason, these molecules know that they're Pete. He's referring to himself. So this kind of gets me onto another divide between like the physical and the conscious. I was listening to an episode of Joe Rogan, and I can't remember the name of the physicist. He was talking to physicists, and he's talking about like how he suggested a link between consciousness and the quantum realm.
Yeah.
Because he talks about anesthetics. So you can knock somebody out. You can inject something into someone's veins, and then they lose consciousness. And he suggested, he didn't say anything definite, that maybe on the quantum level, something that's maybe where your consciousness is, and that's what the drugs are dealing with. And I was like, what? Would you be able to shed any light on like the difference between consciousness and quantum science or anything?
Yeah, and I watch a lot of those kind of shows too, just to see what they're doing. The error that they make, and they won't agree with me, but the error that they make is that they start out assuming everything is atoms and molecules. They start out with the worldview I had before I became Catholic. Um, they're married to that worldview. I mean, if you don't believe in God, and I know from experience, if you don't believe in God, then you're not even going to let yourself come up with any explanation that isn't tied to matter. And so they call it emergentism. They think that the consciousness emerges from matter in some way. And so the quantum world being so mysterious, because we know, we know a lot, but we know also that we don't know a lot. And the quantum world being like that, they tend to me, they're the ones doing the God of the gaps thing. They're trying to cram in explanations there because they can sneak them in. And I don't say that to criticize them, except to say they have a materialistic worldview, and their belief system, they don't have one, but their worldview does not allow for anything else. So they're not going to come up with any other explanation. But the way we would explain it, with a different worldview, is that consciousness is tied to our body because we're body and soul. But there is a point where our what we take in through as data through our senses, and what we think about, cogitate in our brain as a conscious person, also informs our intellect. And our intellect also gives us some control over what we do with our body. That's why the classic example is that a human can make the choice to give a starving child your lunch, even if you're starving too. You can override your biology to do something that's good, whereas a dog probably couldn't do that. But I know my dog couldn't. But there's so we are asking questions differently because we have the view of the human person as body and rational soul, made in the image and likeness of God. We're asking questions with a bigger set of possibilities than the people that are tied to a materialistic belief. And I really do look at it like having the blinders on, where how horses sometimes have the blinders on and they can't see around them, they only can look at the ground. To me, that's what it felt like being a materialist worldview chemist. Is I chained my own intellect. I couldn't think outside of that box because I didn't have a way to do it. I didn't know how to do it. And so when I listen to, very accomplished philosophers and scientists talk about consciousness in this way, I get frustrated because you want to say to them, your body and rational soul. Let's talk about all the things we know about what it means to have a rational soul, but they're not going to listen to that. If they ever do wander into Thomism or something, that if they cross into our field there, then I'm totally ready to correct them if they get it wrong. But it's frustrating. I've got a few neuroscientists that I have followed their work. Some of them have already passed away, but there's one neuroscientist in particular, Walter, I think his name was Friedman. He discovered Aquinas's writing, and it blew him away because when he read what Aquinas says about the interior senses, about memory, imagination, all the things the brain does, he's like, that is the closest thing to modern neuroscience I've ever read. And it comes from this guy who was a priest in the Catholic Church, 600 years ago. So he was 1400 years ago. So he was, how long ago did Aquinas live? I'm not good at doing simple math.
I don't know.
But
Don't worry about it.
but it just, there's a truth there, and I wish that we had a way to engage more with these materialist philosophers and neuroscientists.
Yeah, it's so cool. I mean, one of the things that comes to mind when you're talking, I feel like you're quoting like neuroscientists, and I'm quoting pop culture people. It's like, yeah, my favorite comedian, Joe Rogan, and now I'm gonna. There was this interview with Ricky Gervais and who's that guy, Stephen Colbert. Now,
Yeah.
yes, he's famously Catholic, Stephen, and he's like, I'm a Catholic, you're an atheist, let's go at it. And Stephen does this genius thing that Ricky can't deal with, and he asks, so why does this happen? And
Yes.
Ricky's reaction straight away is like, that's a stupid question. Why would you ask why? And then he goes into how. And he goes on this whole
Yeah.
tirade of like, if you destroyed everything, like if the world was obliterated and everything to do with faith was gone, it wouldn't come back together. And whereas if science would be rediscovered because it's all there. How do we get the scientism to the question why? How, like, you mentioned this neuroscientist discovered Thomas Aquinas. Did you know if he actually had any kind of conversion after that, or was he just like, oh, that's pretty cool?
No, no, he never did, but he wrote a scholarly paper on it and published it. And so I have cited that numerous times in my work as an example of the relevancy of Aquinas today.
Yeah. I mean, Aquinas. What a mind. He's used everywhere. It's just like it's annoying how prolific he was because it's like why do we need why do we need anything? Aquinas has
Yeah,
already thought of everything from every angle and
I know.
articulated it very well, so we don't need anything else, and it's annoying.
I feel that way too.
So do you have any insight into how we might bridge that gap from how and what to why with people?
I I don't understand why any scientist would say don't ask why.
Mm,
Because that's what you start out doing. That is to be a scientist. If you're going to tell someone don't ask why, that's a stupid question, you've just ceased to be a scientist.
mm,
Like you can't be acting scientifically and say I'm not going to ask these questions. What he meant was that's a stupid question because it's going outside of science, and I get it. I totally get it. One of the heartbreaking things about being a materialist, I remember, first of all, I didn't know how to form relationships, because when you're a chemist and you control atoms and other people are just atoms, you just try to control people and you become this control freak, like everything has to be the way I say. And I didn't do relationships very well, but I also didn't understand morality. Like the the materialist worldview says you don't really have to worry about doing anything wrong. It's just your atoms doing their thing. And you know, your logic tells you that, but your heart tells you that there is right and wrong. And so it is a very difficult way to, I mean, that's what got me is I knew things were wrong, but I couldn't say why. And I knew things were right, but I couldn't say why. And for me, like I was a single mother with two kids working for the largest chemical company in the world, the typical feminist, and I knew every night, like I knew I wasn't doing right by my kids. I knew I wasn't doing right with my choices. And I mean, that was the thing that got me. It got personal. I was wrecking my own life. And I was in my 30s. And so, you don't get a second chance. I don't have forever to figure this out. That's what got me. Like I knew I wasn't doing things right and I didn't know why. And so that's what a scientist does. You keep saying why, and I had to look outside of chemistry or I wouldn't have been able to find the answers. But I think some people do just get stuck there and they're not willing I pray for people like that. I mean, that's what we do. I pray, and I've talked to a lot of people like that, and I've just learned to state very confidently my own views and not try to criticize other people.
Yeah, I guess that the difficulty is, yeah, it's that transcendent quality again. It's, as a nurse, we deal with science, but we're not scientists. We are, I don't know, like a mix between, we are bridging the gap between science and humans. And like some
Yeah.
people will be like, science is humans. Humans are science. And there is, that again, that's accurate. It's not true. And like religion, religion makes everything more difficult. Faith, it
Yes.
makes things hard because actually, you have to deal with these things, and you can't just say, my kid's having a tantrum. Oh, that's just a chemical imbalance in the brain. I'll give them some sugar, which will give them an endorphin release, and then they'll be fine. Something like that, which I feel like
Sometimes you
is.
can.
I mean, you
Yeah.
can. It'll work. But then
Yeah.
I'll have to counteract that with some fluoride for their teeth and some, and you start just
Yeah.
dripping things into them. But like, I thought that's so interesting that you were saying that you were so into the scientific world that it actually made it difficult to have relationships.
Mhm.
Um, it makes so much sense of so many doctors that I know. I'm joking, but like. I think that's true. Like, even from like, my perspective of, it can be anything. If you're into, in the hospital, the flow of the hospital is like, okay, we need to move this patient on. It's like, yeah, but this patient isn't ready because they're a person and something's just happened to them and they're feeling these things and their family's not here. And being able to have a relationship in that moment and also only 10 minutes to do an assessment, it's, you know, being human makes things way more difficult.
Yeah.
If only we were just protons, eh?
If only.
So the
We
link,
wouldn't have to worry about much.
gosh, man, the link between like the consciousness and the atomic is
Mhm.
they're not linked. Is that right? They're not.
It's
There must be a link.
You're going to find some answer. Like, I love how Aquinas does talk about the interior senses. I teach a course on this because it's something I'm passionate about. The interior senses, like our imagination and our memory, and the common sense, he calls how you put things together. You don't smell an apple and see an apple and touch an apple. You do it all at once, and your common sense says that's an apple. But the way we take data in with our senses, there is a lot of science to that, and the way that our brain then processes that data, it's called nonlinear dynamics. The way that the electricity, basically, that gets fed into our senses through our neurons, the way it's organized in our brain, it's kind of like waves in the ocean, moving around. That's what Walter Freeman called it. Um, and so there is this cogitation, and there's a lot of consciousness just there, but that is not what makes us alive. That's not the thing that makes us alive or conscious. There is also, for us, we have this intellect, and all that cogitation can inform the intellect, and the intellect can tell us what to do, and it's all one. It's not like they're two separate things, but it's one. We're one composite. But when you get to animals, they don't have the rational soul. They just have what Aquinas calls the sensitive soul and the vegetative soul for plants. There's a form there, and that's the thing that science doesn't want to talk about, is where does the form come from? Who gives the form? And that's why I'm studying philosophy now, because I really want to get my head around that stuff. I'm starting to talk about atoms as having a form. All the quantum numbers are directed by their form. But to talk about form, you have to talk about more than just material and efficient causes. You have to talk about final and formal causes. You have to talk about form and purpose. And scientists don't like to talk about that stuff. Um, but there, that's how, that's really the only way to understand how the world is made. and it's language that scientists don't have. That's why I'm studying it now. I'm trying to shake things up before my life ends. And I'm in my 50s, so I hopefully have a while. But I'm in my 50s, so I want to give scientists more of that language. I'm trying to find a way for scientists to be able to talk about these issues in a more meaningful way. But yeah, it's interesting stuff. But the consciousness discussion is very, very flat in my mind. They're missing the point.
Stacy, can I just say that you're an amazing person? Just like the desire to go deeper. It started with science and it never stopped. And I think it's really inspiring to hear that, like, even in, and by the way, you don't look like you're in your 50s, so hold that to you. But like, you're still going deeper. You haven't stopped. I remember I used to run retreats for kids doing their confirmation, and they was like, "So when is it over? When do we finish?" And I was like, "You don't." And like, you are a testament to that. There is so much out there, and I think one thing that I've learned from this conversation is that quantum science is amazing, but what it really teaches us isn't how everything works, but that everything is way more complicated than we ever thought. And it goes
Mhm.
deeper than quantum science. It transcends even
Mhm.
the space station. Um, so I think we're gonna have to bring it to an end now because I can hear the kids screaming and lots of thumping around.
Yeah.
And I just want to thank you so much for coming on.
Thank
We'll
you.
have to get you back on and stuff. Can you just tell us a bit about, if we want to find out more information about you, what kind of things you're putting out there? Where can we go?
Well, I have a Substack. I don't have a website anymore. I put everything on Substack because it's free. And my Substack is called God and Elements. And I'm writing about my work right now to bring philosophical language, Thomistic philosophical language into science. So I'm writing a lot there. So you can find me on my Substack. It's got all my contact information. If you even come close to spelling my name correctly, you'll find me on the internet. And I just had a book come out in May on IVF, because this
Right.
is a big issue in the United States right now with Donald Trump's executive order to increase access. So it's a big bioethical issue right now. But I have 4 other books, and yeah, just go to God and Elements, and I'm also on Facebook.
Brilliant.
I do.
Brilliant.
I do.
Well, I'm definitely going to get you back on the podcast to talk about IVF. It's a very hot topic. I
Yeah.
love it. I didn't know about the Donald Trump stuff. Thankfully, I'm in New Zealand. But thank you for coming on. Uh,
Thank you.
I want to talk about IVF now. No. Thank you for coming on. And
I have a lot to
everybody,
say about that.
sorry, what was that?
I have a lot to say about that.
Brilliant. We're definitely going to happen. So thanks for coming on. And everybody listening,
Peace be
thank
to
you for
you.
listening. This was Stacy Trasancos, and we've had an amazing conversation. And we can carry on this conversation if you just like, share, and subscribe all our content. Go to our events. We've got some people coming out in the future. We've got Christopher West in the future. We've got Alex Jurado from Voice of Reason and Jason Everett. So please stay in touch with what we're doing on Instagram, follow all our stuff on YouTube, and get involved. God bless.
Peace be to you. In the problem of evil. Let us begin with the question.